just to come here.
Well, you're worth it, sir.
That's what my mother would have said. All right then.
All right then.
Okay. Well, make yourselves comfortable. I mean, don't feel you have to stand.
Yes, sit down, everybody. Sit down.
I may have to stand, but anyway. Very good.
Do sit down, sir.
Oh, if I sit down, I'll never get up. All right.
All right, you know what? I'm going to join you like that then.
Don't get too close.
No, I won't. All right. So we've got a few questions for you then.
Very good. Very
Okay.
good.
We'll start with the first one. So in retrospect, Lord of the Rings, the books, they changed the landscape for the fantasy genre in literature. Okay? And now the much beloved trilogy, which obviously all of these people out here are fans of the trilogy, correct? They changed the landscape for fantasy in film and television. So what does it mean to you to have been a part of something that has been so amazing and so fantastical?
Well, I knew very early on that Lord of the Rings was going to be one of the big ones. And I think actually I said very early on at a little press conference that it was actually going to be one of the most memorable trilogies of all time. And it is. I mean, Tolkien is a great writer. And he wrote a book that it is impossible to film. You read that book and you think, you can't possibly make a movie out of it. And it took the genius of Peter Jackson to make it happen. And I was privileged to be there and watch and slowly realize, I think ahead of other people, that what I was watching was a piece of cinema history that would be regarded as extraordinary for many, many years to come. Anyway, that's enough of that.
Yeah, I would agree. So you played Gimli, the dwarf. So what was it like working with Weta and all the practicalities of having to portray a dwarf in the film, in the production?
Well,
How about I just join you standing up then, right?
Sit down, get out of the way. Right. No, the truth of the matter is that Peter Jackson put together in every department a level of excellence that is almost unique in the world of film. There are great filmmaking capitals. Hollywood is, London is, Rome has been, Paris would claim to be, but and that was not meant to be in any way disparaging. But New Zealand? Goodness gracious, there are only 5 million people there. I'm surprised that they've even got electricity, I thought. But Jackson had vision, and he had genius, and his friends went along with it, and Weta was glorious. I mean, just incredible. I remember being in one of the offices once, and the designer of the whole thing said, "Oh, one moment, John, I've got to take this phone call, it's from the printer." And he put the phone down, he said, "That was the printer just telling me that we had now reached, in terms of our architectural plans and designs," he said, "we have now printed 8 kilometers of plans."
Wow.
I mean, the scale of that, just think about it. Sorry, go on.
No, you're good. So your character of Sallah in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The best ticket in Cairo, in Egypt, in fact. In all honesty, yes. If you've got a few projects going, my boys are unemployed at the moment, and we will come and dig your garden for almost nothing, really, honest. Yes, go on.
So obviously he's much beloved. If
many of the fans want the character to be back in the films. If he were to be back, how would you like him to be returning into that world?
Well, this is this is a difficult question, but let me tell you, how would Sallah have grown up? How would he have evolved over the time? I like to think that Sallah would have been the sort of man like Walid al-Assad. He was an 80-year-old, or maybe 82-year-old keeper of a museum in Palmyra. And when the Taliban was coming, he hid the museum's finest treasures and refused to release them. And he ended up on his knees, refusing to reveal where the treasures were that were going to be stolen and looted. And they beheaded him. And I think that any man who protects history, art, who defends his culture and his people's past, is one of the true and great heroes of his country. I'd like to think that dear old Sallah would have that sort of courage if it came to the push. But that's very serious and very heavy. If Mr. Spielberg said, "John, would you like to come and do my film?" Would I do it? I'd say, "Oh yes, please."
Speaking of Mr. Spielberg, you've worked with him, you've worked with George Lucas. So how was working with them as their own, visionary, their own way of making films? How was that different from working with the likes of Peter Jackson?
Well, first, George was always the man in the background and the observer. So I can't honestly say that I know any more about him than any of you people do. An extraordinary innovator in many ways, and Star Wars was in itself a revelation, and it was a complete fluke. No one expected it to work, and it just caught people's imaginations and became successful. Spielberg, when I first worked with him, it was like working with a young Mozart. He was just endlessly creative, endlessly inventive, and there was a great freedom there. Peter Jackson and Spielberg, I always get silly questions like, which is the best? The truth of the matter, these guys are giants in their own way. They both have the full palette that a director needs to direct. If you want to be a director, you must know history, you must know costume, you must know art, you must know what light does, you must know how to manage people, you must be able to look at a story and see where the highs and the lows are. You must be able to develop character. I mean, the list is enormous. And if you are going to be a director, by the way, for those of you who like films and want to be filmmakers, this is one of the most extraordinary periods in the history of film. Every one of you can be a movie maker now. Just get together, one or two friends, your mum and dad perhaps, or a couple of your school friends or university friends, and say, right, we are going to make a 2-minute movie. And I'm going to write the story, you're going to act in it, and you're going to act in it, and you're going to be the photographer of it. and take a week and tell a good story. There are always good stories out there. You can snatch them from the air. Let's see if we could create a little short 2-minute story just like this now. All right. Okay, a simple story. You have come to meet that man, right? That man is standing behind the screen waiting for an introduction. The problem is that picture won't work, and it's going to flicker, and the technicians are all running around over the place, but you're there waiting. You've been waiting for hours for it to happen, and you're talking to your friends, and he never turns up. He says, I'm not going on until the sound's right. So it's a story about something that doesn't happen, but you could make that a wonderful story in the course of 2 minutes. This politician or this actor or this musician that you've spent time on, that you're going to watch and learn from, is there but won't appear. I mean, that's just a simple little scenario. But there are 10,000 stories. Find a story, get a simple little camera, and learn to tell a story. Write it down. Learn to act in it. Learn to tell the story by picture. And if you can do that, you will equip yourself after a year of doing that, after making 5 or 10 2-minute movies, and then 5 or 10 15-minute movies, and then perhaps a big one. You will have learned about as much about filmmaking as you would in 3 years at UCLA or NYU. You may not know anything about selling the movie, which is a completely different art, but you can do it, and you put it out there on YouTube, and you get your friends to have a look at it, and then the next one's a little bit better, and something magical happens with the third one. You suddenly get a sparkle in the eye of an actor, and a line that just resonates around the world. You know, nobody tosses a dwarf. And suddenly you've got an audience. The key to being successful as an actor, as a writer, as a filmmaker is this: look after the audience. There's a great writer called Dr. Samuel Johnson, who wrote something called an essay in criticism. And there's a couplet from that every creative person should look at. You should carve it in large initials on the wall opposite your bed so that you see it every morning. The drama's laws, the drama's patrons give, and we who live to please must please to live. That's what it's about. It's not about me, it's about me pleasing you. And if you learn to serve your audience and feed it and give it value for money and then a superabundance of value for money, one day the audience will really take you to their hearts. But then that's partly true of everything in life, isn't it, really? If you want to be successful, what is the key to success? I think the key to success actually lies in something that we've all been taught, in good manners. You will in life meet people who are smarter than you. Meet people, well, I certainly do all the time anyway. But you will meet people who are better informed, who know their subject better than you know their subject. But if you follow these simple precepts, I guarantee that you will be successful in whatever you do in life. The truth of the matter is, good manners is the root of it all.
Yep.
What is good manners? Well, I'll tell you what good manners is. It's not just knowing the way, which knife and fork to use. Good manners is the art of making strangers feel comfortable and easy in your presence. And if you can manage that, you overcome your shyness. Shyness, by the way, is a vanity. Every one of you is shy. If I ask, are you shy? A lot of you would go, yes, I am. That's because you're thinking of you. Now, the way to get rid of shyness and get over shyness is very simple. It's think about the other person. If I come on this stage like this now, and I'm limping slightly, and I'm thinking, gosh, can they see that I've got a bit of pain in this leg, and I don't seem to be standing up quite straight, and I'm turning into an old man. If I start thinking about myself like that, I can't face you. I can't concentrate on you. I will stand there going, I will be rendered completely useless. But I come on here with the assumption that you are shy of meeting me. And my job is to make you feel comfortable. And I want you to learn to practice this. How do you practice it? I tell you what, every morning when you go out, especially if you're a young person, every morning you go out, every person you see, you say good morning to them. You say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Now, most people will say, oh, good morning. There will be one person who will go, and you will feel that high. Don't worry about that. The next time you see him, say, good morning, and he'll go. And the next time you see him, say, good morning, and he'll go. But about the 5th or 6th time, he will go, good morning. And the next time you see him, say, good morning, sir, and he'll go, good morning. And a week later, he will go, when you say good morning, he'll say, good morning. And you will have won.
Brilliant. You were part of another fantasy world, the Shannara series. It was short-lived, however. You did get the chance to dabble in playing somewhat of a villainous character in that. Villainous.
A villainous character?
Yeah.
Well,
so you've been quoted saying that villains are fun to play. Could you elaborate on that, please?
look, the truth of the matter is, when I was 5, I had my first school report. And it went, John could do well as soon as he learns that life is not a joke. John hasn't actually learned that lesson yet. But villains are great fun, aren't they? You know, to be a real baddie. You know, to be able to stand up and look at a chap wearing yellow and say, I'm going to roast him for dinner. Your villains are fun.
Yeah.
But then everything's fun. You know, the great lesson I learned when I did shogun in Japan, we would sit down at lunch, and we would have lunch at our tables, all on gravel, and we'd eat our lunch and everyone would go home. And then the Japanese catering woman who was looking after the place would go and she'd pick up all the little things that we had dropped. And then she would remove all the chairs and the tables, and she would take her broom and go, and she would create a pattern in the gravel, a beautiful pattern in the gravel. And what she had done was to take a menial job and make it into art. And it was a lesson that I have never forgotten.
Wow.
Almost anything that you do, you can transform from being a drudge to being art or observation or an act of humanity. Sorry, does that sound very pompous? Go on.
No, it sounds great, actually. So we've got 3 more questions to go.
3 more?
3 more.
Great Scott! All these people here have questions too.
I don't think they mind. I think they love this, right? You're enjoying this? Yeah? All right. Okay, so Amazon Prime is now in the process of creating a Lord of the Rings series.
Well, that's not really true. That was what was put to me earlier on in somebody said, what do you think about this remake of Lord of the Rings? At which point, like an idiot, I said, well, whatever I said, it wasn't pleasant and it was rude and it was stupid and wrong, because that's not what they're doing at all.
No.
What they're doing is the whole pre-world of Lord
Second
of the Rings.
Age,
Yes.
to be exact.
It's a huge effort, and they're shooting it right now in New Zealand. And I think it will be wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm all in favor of it. Tolkien is a giant. And, oh, by the way, talking about Tolkien, I urge you all to watch a film called Tolkien, which is basically covers his young life. You know, his father died. His mother and father came back from South Africa, and his mother died, and then he was boarded at a school, a very good school, and made friends there that lasted him, well, in his mind anyway. They were always with him, though most of them died in the First World War. It is a marvelous film, and I so urge you to watch it. It's glorious, glorious. Beg pardon, I'm sorry.
He met his fellowship, wouldn't you say? Tolkien, when he was at that boarding school, he met his fellowship, right?
That was the fellowship, yes, indeed.
So, if you were to actually have the opportunity to sit down and talk with Mr. Tolkien, what would you like to ask him?
I will ask him, how did you get it so right? You know, you go into World War I. You're in the first day of the first Battle of the Somme. First day of the first Battle of the Somme, the British Army took 100,000 casualties, 20,000 dead. You're standing there, and your friends are dropping on either side of you. And you have to ask yourself, why am I here? How can anything justify this? And that question in the end broke a lot of good men. Robert Graves had a nervous breakdown. Siegfried Sassoon had a nervous breakdown. Owen, who died literally within days of the armistice, possibly the greatest poet of that war, he was clearly collapsing with traumatic disorder. Tolkien survives it. Tolkien's wounded. How does he survive? Well, one, he has a faith. Actually, he is a Roman Catholic, remained Catholic all his life, but he has faith. The second thing he has is he has belief. He believes that German militarism will destroy the world if it is allowed to flourish. He saw it as the destiny of his generation to oppose German militarism. And that is essentially what the theme of Lord of the Rings is about. He knew that every so often, every few generations, there's peace and all that, but suddenly something comes along that challenges everyone. And if a generation cannot meet that challenge, then they stand the chance of losing their civilization. And that's a pretty major theme. So not only is he strong and he survives that, but after the war, he becomes a scholar. Now, those of you who know anything about academia know that scholars, professors, are the most bitchy people in the world. They will always gossip and deride and get envious of each other. But Tolkien actually managed to, they liked him. He managed to make real deep friends amongst his fellow scholars. He becomes internationally known as a Nordic and Icelandic scholar. And then he becomes a successful writer as well. And his students love him. And his family adores him and loves him. I'll lay money that not many of us can claim to tick all those boxes. Tolkien does. Tolkien is one of the very, very great men of his time. That's what I'd ask. How the heck did you do it?
How did you do it? Finally, last question. So, one of my favorite moments in Lord of the Rings, and I'm sure many others would agree that it's a great moment, is at the end of the Two Towers, when Frodo asks Sam, "What are we fighting for?" And then Sam said that there is some good in this world, right? So how important do you think stories that shed hope are important in the times that we're living in today?
We all glory in stories that lift up the human spirit. The truth of the matter is, most men live lives of quiet desperation. And when I say men, I mean women too. The fact is, though, that we have the capacity for doing extraordinary things. And we have the capacity, let's take Gimli for a minute. Gimli is the worst of us. He is suspicious, xenophobic, hostile, aggressive. But he's also got some of the characteristics that we think of are the best in us. The capacity for love, the capacity for friendship, the capacity to embrace a great idea, a great challenge, a great mission, and do it because it's the right thing to do, and to be protective of the little ones, you know? And that's one of the great reasons why we're all attracted to Gimli, because he is so like us. We have so many of his faults and failings, and yet we have the potential for greatness, every one of us. I love coming to these conventions because I get to learn how extraordinary ordinary people are. I meet them, I hear the most amazing stories. And I have to tell you, when I first went to a convention about 25 years ago, I thought, oh God, why am I doing this? Why can't these people get a life? And of course, when I started listening, I realized not only did they get a life, they had a life. A huge, rich life. A huge, rich network of connections with other people. You come here not just to see a silly old actor and to buy a comic or have a photograph. You come here to make friends with people with common interests. And you do. I find one of the extraordinary little forces for good in the world is actually Comic-Con and fan conventions and the bringing together of people who would otherwise not meet each other. And incidentally, of course, something like Lord of the Rings has created cosplay. And there are now, for instance, in the United States, at least 25,000 new companies that are producing costumes and props and things like that. It's actually economically generating new talent, new industries and new business. There is no limit to what we can do with our imaginations and our passion and our sense of delight in life and its possibilities. And that's, in the end, what it's all about. To get back to good manners isn't just using the right knife and fork. Good manners is actually allowing other people to flower and flourish. Because when we do that, we flower and flourish. We should spend our lives trying to enable people to liberate themselves, from this box of restrictions that we have grown up with or impose upon ourselves. Go out there, live, and life will set you free. Let's go on.
Wow. Mr. Davies, I want to say a massive thank you for this. This was an absolute pleasure, right? Yeah. Let's hear it.
But I still think some of them have got some funny questions.
Well, the thing is that I'm not 100% sure if we're open to that or not. Could we have someone to double check, because Mr. Davies would like to take a few questions.
As long as you've got nowhere else to go.
Come here.
Let's choose.
Ask a question.
Yes.
In the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Gimli is he the only dwarf left?
The last dwarf in Khazad-dûm, yes, but he's not the only. He's not the last dwarf. The dwarves live on. You're not that tall yourself. No. But the problem is, I'll tell you what our problem is as dwarves. As you know, dwarf women can grow beards as well. Yeah, that's very tricky. I mean, you're in the nightclub or the bar, sipping the mead, and you see this gorgeous hair, this beautiful beard, and you go, "Hey, sweetie, do you fancy a walk in the moonlight?" And he turns round and hits you. It's not easy being a dwarf. Right, thank you for your question. What? Yeah, yes, but afterwards, go and sit in the line, you miserable little... Right, next question, but we'll do one. Yes.
In the Lord of the Rings movies, how challenging was you to shoot? I mean, the dwarves was a little bit, shorter, so how was the challenges?
What? You think dwarves are small? Are you trying to pick a fight, young man? Eh? No. We dwarves are... You see, the whole truth about Gimli, and the reason you find him occasionally funny, is he doesn't realize he's small. Everybody else does. He thinks of himself as, you know, as big as anyone there. You know?
There was an awkward situation or something because of the heights with the actors.
There are lots of tricks to make people small, but I spend a lot of time on my knees. And the first day, I'd spend 8 hours getting the makeup on and the prosthetic. And then I had the big helmet on over the prosthetic, and I had this big axe, and I was on my knees. And Peter said, okay, all right, hit him, John. The prosthetic. I'm back in makeup for another 8 hours. It's not easy being a dwarf. Next question.
All right. We'll take Kim and we'll take your question as well, okay?
So I loved you as a professor, Arturo. In light of what you said about academics in general, it makes the character so much more enjoyable. Thank you for sharing that story. And
thank you very much. Are you an academic yourself? Sorry about that, yes.
All right, we'll take 2 more. You, and then that's it, okay?
My question is, did you get along with the actor that played Legolas, or did you two actually have beef between you two?
Well, I'd like to clear up a couple of things about the little pointy-eared fellow. He's a slacker. Anyone can do that, but for real wet work, you need an axe. And he cheats all the time. However, as to the rest of his character, well, let me point out this. Let me explain to you the real behind-the-scenes events. Day 1, canoe practice. The dwarf and the elf are in a canoe together. And the canoe capsizes. The elf said, it's the dwarf's problem. He did it. We go and have lunch. After lunch, we have different partners in the canoe. There is a hobbit in the canoe with the elf. And guess what? The canoe capsizes! Thus demonstrating that dwarves are infinitely superior canoeists than pointy-eared elves.
All right, so last question. I'm sorry, guys. Last question, and then we have to end it. I'm really sorry. Okay, go ahead.
So, in Lord of the Rings, after every victory or major event, there is a big feast and a lot of drinking, especially the scene with Gimli and Legolas drinking. How much was that was real?
Oh boy. I think we should end now, John.
Of course, well, you know, the truth of the matter is that well, you know, the pointy-eared devil thinks that he can hold his liquor, but he can't hold his liquor like a dwarf can. I'd like to be able to tell you, but the truth of the matter is for some reason I developed a headache, and my remembrance of all that was somehow it slipped my memory the next day. In fact, there's a big blank period there that I don't know what happened. But I'm sure I beat him.
On that note, guys, give him a massive round of applause. Thank you for being such an awesome audience. Thank you for listening. John Rhys-Davies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, sir.
You're a fabulous audience. Thank you for coming, and really enjoy these next few days, because I certainly will.